Let me talk to your mom directly. I love the kid.
Check me out. Boy, breaking news.
Good evening, Kevin Durant, L. Duncan. A day after a landmark lawsuit against the NFL, Brian Flores is speaking out. What he says about why he chose to speak out now.
L, the ripple effect is already being felt as former NFL black coaches are speaking out about the Rudy Rule as well as tanking. Former Browns head coach Hugh Jackson implied on Twitter that he was paid to lose games to improve draft position by Cleveland owner Jimmy Haslam. The director of Jackson's foundation, Kimberly Deemer, took it a step further, saying Jackson and the team executives, Sashi Brown, Paul DiPodesta, and Andrew Berry, were all paid to lose. She said the NFL knew about the scheme and covered it up. Deemer also tweeted that Brian Flores should direct message her because she has records that will help his case. No?
Crack's good, Mike. Crack's good.
Joined now by
What's the crack?
NFL head coach and current coach at Grambling State, Hugh Jackson. Good evening, coach. And I want to start. You were with the Raiders. You, of course, were with the Browns for 2.5 years. What were your experiences?
Actually, no, he hasn't official.
As a head coach in the NFL?
Well,
He looked good. Yeah, he looked good against Houston. He's not playing tonight. He's been in and out of the lineup, so no, he hasn't.
You normally think you have a chance to end up as a coordinator or a position coach, or that wasn't the case. So I had to go back to Cincinnati. Marvin Lewis, family kind of gave me a lifeline, gave me a chance.
Benzo, what's up with you? I'm running good, brother. Running good. Running good, brother. Modoc, what up? So,
Brian Flores claims in his lawsuit that he was offered $100,000 per loss by Dolphins owner Stephen Ross. You implied on Twitter.
Absolutely, Liam.
You were
No doubt.
Explain what happened.
Well, I need to really explain that. I think
Absolutely, Liam. There's no way guys are that good and aren't egotistical. Or in other words, they aren't feeling themselves. There's no way. So I think it's the Rams Super Bowl to lose. So I think it's the Rams Super Bowl to lose. But I know I'm not going to completely bet on the Rams because I know who Matt Stafford is. That's what it is in a nutshell. I know who Matt Stafford is, and I know what he can and is capable of doing. So, I was looking at the standings earlier today, and Philly is a half a game out of first place. They're a game out of first place. Oh, yeah, they're a game out of first place and a half a game out the 2 spot. So from 1 to 6 is separated by 1 game, 1.5 games. From 2 to 5 is separated by half a game. Brooklyn is evidence that Brooklyn a week ago, this is how much better the Eastern Conference has gotten. A week ago, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I think it was a little bit over a week ago, Brooklyn was in second place in the East. Today is Wednesday. A week ago Wednesday, or 2 weeks ago Wednesday, they were in second place. They're in 6th place now. That's where they are. So the separation between 1 and 6 is a hair. But I also think that this is the time, because like I said to you before, that this being the dog days of the season, this is a very interesting time, and it's a very good opportunity for teams to start creating some separation. Absolutely. Because it's going to get, Kevin Durant's not going to be out the entire season. So let's make sure we 100% clear about that. He is not going to be out the entire season. Chicago is decimated by injuries, yet they still are holding on to that number 1 spot. Miami has had Kyle Lowry out of the lineup for 2 weeks now. They still tied for first place. So nobody's giving anybody anything, right? Nobody's giving anybody anything. These these spots in the Eastern Conference are at especially the top 5 spots in the Eastern Conference, they come at a premium. And the teams that are in these top 5 spots, they look like they are legit teams. I did not have Cleveland involved in any of this before the season started. And I will not sit here and lie to you and say that I did, because I did not. That is not true. I had Cleveland on the outside looking in, and I stood on that. And the fact that they're one game out of first place in a rugged Eastern Conference says a lot about not just that unit, says a lot about what Bickerstaff is doing with that group, man. Bickerstaff is doing a tremendous job with that team, and I can't say enough about him. I really can't. I can't say enough about him, and I can't say enough about what he's doing with that group. I'm impressed with Garland, who I think is an all-star, right? I'm impressed with Jared Allen, who I think the Brooklyn Nets to this day are still kicking themselves, because Jared Allen is exactly what they need in the middle. He's exactly what if they had Jared Allen in the middle, even with the inconsistencies of Irv being out of the lineup, and with Kevin Durant being hurt, I still think that they would be right in the middle of it. Even though they still are at the bottom of that pack, I don't think that it would even be an issue with him being their primary rim protector and rebounder. Absolutely. Because I think James Harden's going to break down at some point. I do. I think he's going to break down at some point. I think that the inconsistent in and out of Kyrie Irving coming in and out of the lineup, I think that that's going to catch up to them. I really do. And the fact that Kevin Durant's going to miss 2 months, and this is the second time, this is the second time in 2 years that he's had an injury that has cost him months. So I'm posing a question. KD still, in terms of a skill set, is super sharp. I mean, he was leading the league in scoring. But the question that I pose to you is KD starting to break down? Is that something that we need to talk about? Because I think that KD is starting to break down. And I don't know if he's going to hold up. Not in terms of his skill set, because his skill set is still there, but I don't know if he's going to hold up for another 5 years. I just don't. So the question that I'm posing to you tonight is KD starting to break down? I'm all ears. All ears. Mm-hmm. Hold that thought. Mm-hmm. It could have happened to anybody. That's a fact. Yes, it could have. Just like the hamstring injury last year could have happened to anybody. Just like the Achilles injury could have happened to anybody. In fact, it does happen to anybody. And those are the people who start to break down. But here's the thing, though, Brandon. James is out of the lineup too, right? James is having a problem too, where he's got swelling in his knee and he's going to miss his 4th consecutive game tonight. So he's been out of the lineup too. And we're going to get to James in a little bit. But KD's last injury was last year. He missed half the season. Mm-hmm. He hasn't. I might have to agree with you on that, Jeremiah. When he tore his Achilles and then came back in the finals, when he strained his Achilles, and then he came back in the finals, he wasn't the same in terms of his body. I don't know if I'm giving him 4 or 5 years neither, Darrell. I don't. And the reason why I don't feel like that is because I just see how he's breaking down. His skill set hasn't changed, but his body, he's starting to break down. I don't think he's going to last 4 or 5 more years. I don't think he's going to hold up that long. Had a complete season off. That's not your opinion. That's a fact. Keegan, you going to go to 4 years? I don't know if I'm going to go 4. I'll go 3. And once again, I want to make sure that we are 100% clear. And I want to make sure that we are 100% transparent about this. We're talking about a dude whose skill set hasn't changed, because KD's game isn't predicated like Russell Westbrook or DeMar DeRozan or guys like that whose game is predicated on athleticism and flight. KD's game isn't predicated on that, right? James's game is predicated on that. But James has circumvented the system where he doesn't have to play that much in the air. KD's game is a lot more skill set. But with that being said, he still needs that athleticism. And it looks to me like it's starting to catch up with him. Look, it just looks like it's starting to catch up with him. But I will admit that he does still have it. I will not go against that, saying that he doesn't still have it. I do think that. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Right? It's interesting you mentioned that about Phoenix. The fact that they just look like a more cohesive unit this season than they did last year. That was Chris Paul's first year. This year, they just look like a more cohesive unit than they did last year. So them getting back to the finals would not shock me at all. That's number one. And number two, them winning it is a realistic possibility. Just so you know, this is their second double-digit win streak of the season. They had 18 when they ran up on the Warriors, and they just won their 11th straight last night. So this unit that they have, more than anything, just looks like a cohesive unit. I love what Cam Johnson is doing. Chris Paul not putting that unit on his back, just being the floor general. I would love to see them get Ayton more involved than they do. I don't think that they get him involved nearly as much as I would like to see them get him involved. But with that being said, I do feel like if they ended up in the West Finals against Golden State, I think that they beat them. It's going to take 6, maybe 7 games to do it, but I think that they could get past Golden State. Absolutely, I believe that. Well, Jonas, I don't know if that's a fair comparison because Leonard is 2 years younger than KD. So it's not like Leonard is 3 years younger than KD. Leonard is 30 years old. KD is 33. Right? And Leonard had knee problems going back to when he was in San Antonio. And not only did he have knee problems, that's how he ended up in Toronto, because he told everybody this knee thing is worse than what you guys think. And you want to send me out there and you're trying to tell me that I'm not correct, that I'm correct, and I'm not correct. So this thing is a lot worse than what they were giving him credit for. Way worse. So with that being said, you look at what's going on now with him, and now he's got a partially torn ACL. So he didn't rip it all the way. He just partially tore it, which is worse. Because at least if he ripped it in half, we could sew it back together. Well, the fact that it's partially torn, now that might affect some of his athleticism. So when I look at KD, and Leonard is only this has only been his knee that's been the main issue. KD is a multitude of things. In 19, it was the Achilles. Last year, it was the hamstring that kept him out for almost 2 months. This year, now he's got a sprained MCL, which is why I posed the question: is this dude starting to break down? Because what it reminds me of is Bryant when Kobe tore up his Achilles, and then it was just a domino effect. It went from his Achilles to his shoulder, and not before his shoulder, it was his knee. He cracked his kneecap, and then it went from his kneecap to his shoulder. So Bryant started to break down, and that's kind of what this looks like with KD. Man, Andrew, I'll tell you what. Chris Paul making Bismack Biyombo look like if I'd have had him since the beginning of the season, he might have been an all-star. That's what he making him look like. Had I had him since the beginning of the season, he might have been an all-star. And all Bismack Biyombo is doing is rebounding, setting picks, rim running, and diving to the basket. That's it. And Chris Paul got him looking like, had he been on the crew from the beginning, he might have been an all-star. Leonard has had ankle problems. That's a fact, Jonas. But with that being said, those ankle problems, that was minimal. And not to mention, in 17, when he rolled his ankle, that wasn't a non-contact injury. That was Zaza deliberately doing that. And it took him out of the series. So he doesn't have a history of ankle problems. I want to know what the holdup is, Darrell. Why don't they get him back in time? We're in February. It's been almost a year now with Wiseman. What's the holdup? What are we waiting for? This team is a championship contender. What are you waiting for? Is he ready or is he not ready? I don't understand what the holdup is. Bismack Biyombo is not a budget Bam. No, he is not. No way. So you telling me that if Bam was in Charlotte, he wouldn't be 23, 24 a game? First of all, Bismack is listed as 6'9". I don't think he's that big because Embiid towers over him. So I'm good. Excuse me. I'm glad you mentioned that, Chris, because we're going to get into that too. So the consensus here is Kevin Durant. The consensus, what it sounds like to me, is 4 more years at this level tops. And I'm in disagreement because I think he's got 3 more years at this level tops before he's over. So the question is well, how many more years does Chris Paul have at this level? And I think Chris Paul got 2 tops. Definitely 1 more, but 2 tops before he starts to break down. I don't see anything past 2 years with Chris Paul. That's why that window for Phoenix to win it, is now. They got last year, they got this year, and they got next year. And then after that, that's it. That is it. And even with next year, ain't no guarantee that we coming back. You got injuries, you got free agency. A multitude of different things can happen. So I'm giving Chris Paul 2 years at this level before he starts to slow down. I ain't even going to say slow down. I'm saying because he's already slowed down. I'm saying 2 more years at this level before he is over. Flores is not speaking up just for coaches in the NFL. Flores is speaking up for women, for people with disabilities, for people who are disenfranchised. He's speaking up for all of those people, all of them. That's what I'm saying, Jeremiah. Chris Paul is 36. There's no way that I believe Chris Paul is going to be playing at this level because he could very well be a first-team All-NBA performer. There's no way that I'm believing that Chris Paul at 38, 39 is still going to be playing at a first-team All-NBA level. I don't see it. Especially with his history. I have a difficult time with that. So, yeah. I think Chris Paul is better than Lowry. I think he's a better shooter. I think he's more in control of his emotions. I think that he is a better floor leader. That's not to say that Lowry isn't those things. I just think Chris Paul is better at it. I think he's a better defender than Lowry. I think Lowry is a lot of bulldog and Philly. That's who he is. And Chris Paul is more cerebral. I think he is a smarter defender. I think he's craftier or more crafty. I think he's better than Chris Paul. I think he's better than Kyle Lowry. Well, you're saying that now, Jeremiah, because Chris Paul is 36, so he does have a bit of a dumpy look to him, kind of like Chris Paul. Kind of like Lowry does. And I don't want to sound crass, but that's really what it is. Kyle Lowry has a dumpy look to him, right? But Chris Paul, I don't know if you would say that about him 10 years ago, because he didn't look like this 10 years ago. If you put him next to Kyle Lowry, because they're around the same age. I think Kyle Lowry's 34, going on 35, and Chris Paul is 36. So they're around the same age. I don't think that Kyle Lowry has always had a dumpy look to me. Always. So, and that's not to say that he doesn't take care of his body, because he does. It's just, that's just how he's put together. Right? So, when I look at what Chris Paul has done in terms of his game, but I can appreciate when I look at what Chris Paul has done to his game, I don't think there's much of a comparison. But in terms of bodies at this stage, yeah, I can see that. No, they can't. They cannot get rid of him. They just can't do it. Simply because of the extension that he signed. And a lot of that extension that he signed, it was thank you money. Right? A lot of that stuff, because Phoenix, before last year, the last time they had been in the NBA Finals was in '93. That was when they had Barkley. That was the last time they were in the championship series. They had gotten close with Steve Nash. They were in the Western Finals a couple times, but that Steve Nash group wasn't able to get over that hump, right? So with that being said, Charles was able to get them over that hump. Now, when I think about what Chris Paul did just in 1 year, we're talking about a team that didn't make the playoffs the year before, right? They didn't make the playoffs the year before, to being in the NBA Finals, and I think he was the catalyst of that. And he did look like, which he still does now, like he's got some good years left in him. So, of course, that they're going to pay him according to what they see right now. That, this is going to last for another 3 years. This is going to last for another 4 years. When in reality, if we could get 2 years of this, 2 more years of this out of him, we'll take it. Mm-hmm. No, Jonas, it's not Chris Paul being compared to Lowry in terms of their games. We all know that Chris Paul is a better point guard than Kyle Lowry. And I don't think it's close, to be honest with you. But in terms of body type, I could see the comparison now, considering Chris Paul is, he's older. He's got a lot of miles on him. He does have a bit of a dumpy look to him. He does. And that's because I'm on the back nine. And, Kyle Lowry has always had a dumpy look to him. I always feel like that. I always felt like that he did have that. So I think you can argue that Lowry is less impactful in the Heat currently than CP for the Suns. I would not rule out a Suns-Milwaukee rematch. I would not rule that out. No, it doesn't make you inherently better. But here's the thing, though. The thing is that the gold standard of winning. The gold standard of greatness is winning, and you guys, that's what you hold great players to. That's the standard you hold great players to. Well, what did they do? Because as awesome as this team is, as awesome as this guy is, as awesome as this guy is, if he didn't win, it doesn't matter to you. So when you have a guy who wins, even if he only won once, you will put that guy ahead. I'll give you a prime example. If Russell Westbrook were to win the NBA championship, I can guarantee that I will have to listen to Russ is a top 5 point guard all time. I'm guaranteeing I would have to listen to that because that will be all over the place. Is Russ a top 5 point guard all time now? And why? Just because he won. It wouldn't be anything else because everything that he's doing now, I mean, he's been doing that over the last 10 years. But the fact that he won it, his team won it, now we having a completely different conversation. Completely different. It doesn't mean anything to me either, Michael. And the reason why it doesn't mean anything to me is because I have players who have won NBA championships and players who haven't won NBA championships that I think the player who didn't win an NBA championship, he's still better than you. He's still better than you. You know, Dirk Nowitzki won an NBA championship. I don't think he's better than Malone. I do not. I do not think he was a better player than Malone. Nope. So I think you would be in the minority to have Russ in the top 5 point guards without winning an NBA championship. You are definitely in the minority with that. Mm-hmm. And not to mention, Michael, let's not forget, Lowry was not great in that final series. I mean, he had a 3-11 game. He had a 2-14 game. He had a 3-9 game. He was not good in that series. He wasn't. Mm-mm. I do agree with that too, Jonas. Absolutely, I do. I do, and the reason why I agree with that is because I look at what Milwaukee has done and the fact that the Eastern Conference is just so much better this year that it says so much that we got a team, the defending NBA champs, they in 5th place in the East, and they're only a game out of first place, a game and a half out of first place. And from 1 to 6 is separated by 1.5 games. 2 to 5 is separated by a half game. That's nuts. Absolutely nuts. So well, the reason why they dry right now, Peter, is because we still got to wait for another week. I'm telling you right now, things will heat. The trade deadline is the 12th. I think it is. Today is the 2nd. So the trade deadline is in 2 weeks. So by next week, I'm telling you, I very much believe that things will start to heat up. Absolutely, they will. Worst NBA franchise of all time. That's easy. The Clippers. The Clippers. No doubt about it. The Clippers. Mm-hmm. And I know what I've seen and what you guys have seen as of late. It's the Clippers. They got new ownership. It's the Clippers. Now, answer this question for me. I did hear the Ben Simmons to Washington scenario. Are you giving Washington anything else besides Ben Simmons, or are you comfortable with Ben Simmons for Bradley Beal straight up? Is that okay with you? Are you comfortable with that? Yes, Liam, even Lob City. And I could go on and on about Lob City. Lob City might have been the most underachieving team in NBA history. Chris Paul, first team All-NBA. Blake Griffin finished third in league MVP votes in 2013. DeAndre Jordan, first team All-NBA in 2016. First team All-NBA. The best bench player in the game in Jamal Crawford. One of the 5 best sharpshooters in the game in JJ Redick. They couldn't get to the conference. Forget winning the NBA championship. They couldn't get to the conference finals. If that was a team today where I ran off the guys that I just ran off, right? We are in 2022, and we got a team over the last 4 years that have had 3 guys on that team that have been first team All-NBA. They got the best 6 man in the game and one of the best sharpshooters in the game, and they can't make it to the conference finals. What is the narrative on them today? Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Well, let me ask you this question. You doubt that the Wizards are going to want Ben Simmons. Do you guys remember a conversation that we had? Maybe, okay, we're in the beginning of February. So maybe 2 months ago when the Washington Wizards were at the top of the Eastern Conference and everybody was in my ear. OG, what do you got to say about my Wizards right now? What do you got to say about the Wizards now? And I said, quote, I would very much like to have this conversation. I like what they're doing right now, right? But I would very much like to have this conversation again in 2 months. When we're around the trade deadline, I'd like to have this conversation again, right? And I got a lot of scoffs. Do you think people are finally coming around to the idea the Nets are pretenders due to what you've seen in what I've seen recently? All laughs. How long have you been in these lives with us? You've been here for quite some time. Is that not correct? I just want to ask, because I see you all the time, and me and you talk all the time. Is that correct? Yes, we do. And with that being said, what have I been saying about the Brooklyn Nets since December? What do I think of them? One more time, Darrell, for the people in the cheap seats. I'm convinced of it. And now the question that it's interesting, the question that you just asked about how, people about the idea they're finally starting to come around to the idea that they're pretenders and not contenders. This is something that you and I have been talking about for months. I wasn't sold on them, especially when they moved off of Jared Allen. When I saw what they had in the middle, when I saw that in terms of rebounding, in terms of defense, and the fact that James Harden is their leading rebounder, I'm thinking there's no way we can win like this. And now this is something that's becoming more of a narrative that, wait a minute, I don't know if Brooklyn is the real deal. I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if Brooklyn is the real deal. I've been saying that for months. Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to see LeBron get on the floor before we get to 40 racks, or before we get to 40,000 points. I'd much rather see him stay on the floor, because he's got this inflammation in his knee that's causing his knee to swell up like it is, and it's starting to make me nervous, because I think that we have to have this conversation. And the conversation is, I'm gonna get with you in a second, DeMarcus Cousins. I'm gonna get with you in a second. I think we have to start having this conversation that James is getting old, man, and we have to accept it, because we're so used to him playing. Number one, we're so used to him being around. That's number one. Number two, we're so used to him being around and playing at a high level for a long time. And when we see him out the lineup, it's one of those things where you feel like, well, it's just going to be for a little while. Yo, he's 37 years old. James got 1,000,000 miles on him. 1,000,000. So we have to start accepting the fact that James is getting old and he's not going to hold up forever. He's not going to hold up forever. So to answer your question about who's better, KD or Bird, Bird's better than KD. And I've had this conversation to nauseum, and I'm convinced of it. That and the reason why I stand on it is because not just because I saw Bird, but also because I saw KD too. So I was old enough to see. I didn't catch Bird on the other side of his prime like I did with Jabbar, right? I ain't catch Bird on the other side of his prime like I did with George Gervin or with Doc. I caught Bird when he was becoming that dude. He became that dude, and then he started to break down. I caught KD when he was becoming that dude. He became that dude, and then he started to break down. And I think about I can appreciate KD's skill set. I would never question KD's skill set. The thing that I do question about KD in terms of his scoring, I'd like to question his killer. Like I have yet to see him pour it on. Like, I'm not letting you off the hook, because that's primarily what KD is. Ultimately, he's buckets. The thing that I put ahead of KD, the thing I put KD ahead of with Larry Bird is him scoring the basketball, and he a better athlete. Other than that, he don't do nothing else better than Bird. Nothing. So he didn't need a killer in Golden State. He had what was what I call the gang mentality. Yo, I'm running with a bunch of hoodlums who hoodlums ain't the word I'm looking for. No, I don't want to say that. Even though I already said it, but he's running with a bunch of dogs. So I might look like I'm a killer when I'm running with these dudes, when in reality, I'm really not that much of a killer. More than I am, I'm just one of these dudes. And I'm just a lot better with these dudes. So when I think about KD as a player, and he had gotten compared to James so much that James is better than him, and that's why you saw a different KD when he saw him in the 17 finals. He did not look. The minute I watched him in game one, he suggested to me that the dude you saw 5 years ago, I'm not that dude anymore. This is a different dude that you're looking at right now. A completely different dude. But with that being said, Bird was that dude from the beginning. And the narrative that I always come to when I talk about KD, you guys know how I feel about being an all-NBA performer and being an all-league defender. I take those things very seriously because this is the best of the best, right? To be an all-NBA performer, that means that and to be an all-NBA performer once, maybe twice, that doesn't make you an all-time. That doesn't mean that you are at this level. That means that you were this good for this long. Bird was first team all-NBA 9 times in 10 years. What is the narrative if we got a guy running around in the NBA today that from 2011 to 2022, I'm sorry, that's 11 years. So from 2010 from 2012 to 2022, from 2012 to 2021, he was first team all-NBA. How are we talking about him? What's the narrative on him? Gervin was better than Alex English. I did not pledge in college. I went to a predominantly white school. They had What are them dudes that wear the blue? Those dudes were at my school. Them dudes that wear the blue. We didn't have we didn't have Q dogs, and we didn't have the dudes that wear the red deltas. Yeah, we didn't have them dudes. That's who is that, Peter? That's Kobe. That's how we talking about him. That's Bryant. That's Jordan, right? That's who these dudes are. Correct? Okay. That was Bird for an entire decade. And he finished in the top 3 in league MVP votes. 8 of the 9 years. I don't. I'm not a Fordham guy. I got this shirt from in 2015. I used to ref college basketball, and I did a scrimmage at Fordham, and in addition to paying us, they gave me a shirt, and I wore it. And it's good for working out. It's very difficult to argue that. I'm sure he does. I'm sure Bronny shows shades of his father. I mean, I grew up in the same house, so of course, the one dude that I watch play the most, or the dude that I see play the most, absolutely, I'm going to model my game after him, right? I'm absolutely going to do that. Brandon, what's your logic on Jabbar and Chamberlain? I'm interested to know that. What is your logic on Jabbar and Chamberlain? My favorite player on the 25 spot is Jason Tatum. I thought I've said that before, but that's fine if I didn't. But yeah, my favorite player on the 25 is Jason Tatum. He's my guy. I love him. Johnny Davis. Max, who is Johnny Davis? Where does he play? Chamberlain over Bill Russell. Johnny Davis. So he plays at Wisconsin. I'm not really a college basketball guy, but it sounds like I need to start watching this dude. Yeah, I do think Jason Tatum is better than Jaylen Brown right now. I do believe that. I think Jason Tatum is a franchise player. I don't think Jaylen Brown is a franchise player. I don't. I'm so sick of hearing that. Wilt played in one of the weakest eras, and he dominated it. So why are you taking that away from him? He dominated it. So what? And I can say the same thing about, well, Shaq played in one of the weakest eras. No, he didn't, because he played against Olajuwon. He played against David Robinson. He played against Patrick Ewing. Well, in between those guys, there was a lot of Dwayne Shinchis and Felton Spencer and Ronnie Cycli and Kevin Duckworth, guys like that. It wasn't like the league was littered with Ewing and Olajuwon and David Robinson and Mutombo. That's only 4 guys. The other 24 guys were that logic so makes me nuts when I hear that, man. And the reason why that logic doesn't work, Wally, is because the notion that if he would have played in a more competitive era, well, actually he did. And you know why he did? Because there were less teams, which means that I got to see the tougher competition more. So imagine Shaq having to deal with Olajuwon, Ewing, David Robinson, and Mutombo, and 5 other teams. That's it. Well, that was Chamberlain. I got to deal with Russell. I got to deal with Willis. I got to deal with Who am I thinking about? Nate Thurman. I got to deal with these guys. I got to deal with Chamberlain. Jabbar. I got to deal with these guys and just 10 other teams. Kevin Garnett goes ahead of Dirk. The game has evolved. Absolutely it has. Which suggests to me that if Chamberlain played in the 90s, I think that he would dominate just like he did in the 60s. There's nothing to suggest to me that Chamberlain wouldn't dominate in the 60s like he did in the 90s. Nothing. Well, take it a step further than that, Jeremiah. Take it a step further than that. His team was the only team to beat Russell's team in the 60s. How are we talking about a guy? And the reason why I like to bring up today is because I want to put this in context of today. So imagine from 2010 to 2020, we had one team dominate the entire decade. The entire decade, they dominated it. And one guy, his team beat that one team. How are we talking about them? How are we talking about him? Jabbar is better than Kareem because he did it longer. He did what Chamberlain did at the level Chamberlain did it. Chamberlain scored more, but he did what Chamberlain did for a longer period of time. That's the difference. I mean, we're talking about a dude who won Finals MVP at age 38. At age 38, he won Finals MVP. He was the oldest player in the league. Ewing was better than Alonzo Mourning. Jason Kidd was better than Steve Nash. Mm-hmm. Now think about that for a second, 5,000. In an 8-team league in the 60s, Chamberlain, Russell, Thurman, Pettit, right? And Willis Reed. Oh, did you say Willis Reed? I don't think you said, yeah, and you didn't even mention Willis Reed. That's who he got to deal with during that decade. He wasn't as efficient as Magic, but Jason Kidd, when he was doing it, it wasn't many better than him. And not only were there, and what I also, not only were there not many better than him, he played in a point guard era that was, like we just got finished talking about Chamberlain, that was very competitive. You know, Jason Kidd came in the game in 94. Gary Payton was running around. Penny Hardaway was running around. Stockton was at the top of the league. Tim Hardaway was running around. Kevin Johnson, Rod Strickland. So this guy was in a very competitive NBA at the lead guard position. Mark Price was in the game when he was running around. So Mookie Blaylock. There was a lot of great point guards running around during that time. So when I think about Jason Kidd and I think about what he was doing during that time, so we got a big point guard, Jason Kidd at 6'4", right, who could pass the ball with the best of them. Jason wasn't much of a scorer. Jason wasn't much of a scorer. He could score the basketball, but Jason was more of a 15 to 17 a game guy. Jason was more of a distributor and a floor leader and a defender than he was a scorer. I mean, I think that goes to guys like Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook. These guys were more scorers than they were distributors. Even though they were distributors, they were more scorers. And he was better at his job than Steve Nash was at his job. But it's like this, though. Because offensively, Steve Nash was way more efficient. Way more. In terms of him being able to score the basketball, going to the stripe, He was more efficient. Peter, good to see you, my man. Take it light, brother. Liam, good to see you, my man. Max, take it light, brother. Good to see you. Right. I didn't even talk about the point guards in 2000, like Marbury and Steve Francis and Chauncey Billups, Chris Paul. Those guys. Tony Parker. Darren Williams. Guys like that. I didn't even get into those guys. Oh. I don't think so, Jack. I don't think he's the most skilled big man of all time. What do you constitute as? Let me talk to Jack real quick. Jack, what do you constitute as skill? Because they didn't have a 3-point line. They didn't have a 3-point line until 1979. So that's not something that I could put in my game, because if it was, then I would have put that in my game. So what do you constitute as skill? Because I may have a different idea of skill than you do. It's interesting you mentioned that, Brandon, because I don't put productivity over longevity, because you could be productive for 1, maybe 2 years. But if you doing what you did for 1 or 2 years, if you're doing that for a decade, that means more to me than it's essentially like a rapper or a singer. You know, you gave me, you had over the last decade, you had 5 albums, and 2 of them were great. The other 4 were, the other 3 were meh. I mean, I can't talk to you, and I can't talk about you, and I can't put you in the same conversation with people who, I had 6 albums in 12 years, and 4 of them were fantastic. I can't put you in the same conversation with those people. I can't do it. UK, what's up? UK is in the house. Yo, chill on the Spud and Muggsy thing, man. We could chill on that. Muggsy was better. Darren Williams was better than. Do you remember Darren Williams put 60 on Kemba? Do you remember that? Kemba will tell you that himself. This was when he was with the Nets in Jersey, not in Brooklyn, but in Jersey. Kemba will tell you that himself. His ability to perform and make everyone on his team better. And Chamberlain did that. Chamberlain did the same thing. So we view field goal percentage in terms of half. Well, that's a big deal. If you're making half your shots, because of what defense is in the game and how difficult it is to get shots off. So if you got a guy who's making half of his shots, that's not including his open shots, where I'm making 60% of my open shots, which now averages out. Because if I'm making less than half of my shots when I'm going up against tough defense, but I'm making over 60% of my shots when I'm open, that averages out to around 50%. And I mean, that matters. Absolutely, it does. So only 2 guards all time were efficient? No. I mean, Shaq led the league in field goal percentage a bunch of different times. Does that mean he a better shooter than Steve Nash? I mean, he played closer to the basket, but I don't want to take that away from what Shaq did. I mean, he did play closer to the basket. I mean, that does matter. Jason Tatum because I could build my unit around him, and I think that I still stand on it. And you guys get wrapped up in what's going on right now. I believe that Jason Tatum is going to be the best player in the game at some point. I stand on that. I am 100% confident he's going to be the best. And if he ain't the best player in the game, he's one of the 3 best. We're going to be talking about him. We're going to be talking about him like we talk about Embiid, KD, Giannis, Embiid, or Giannis, AD, KD, or Giannis, James, KD. That's how we're going to be talking about Jason Tatum. OG, how good would Grant Hill would have been? Well, I've said this countless times, man. If you line up all the what ifs, if ever you ask me about a what if, and you ask me if Grant Hill and this guy, with the exception of Len Bias, if you ask me if Grant Hill, this guy, Grant Hill, that, for me it's Grant Hill. I honestly thought that I was looking at a better, a bigger, more athletic, not bigger, but a better version of Scottie Pippen. I thought he was going to be a top 10 player all the time. I was convinced of that. Absolutely, I was. Wait a minute. If Jason Tatum isn't top 5 right now, if Jason Tatum isn't top 5, where is he right now? I think Jason Tatum is a top 15 player. Actually, Jason Tatum is not in year 6. Jason Tatum came in the game in 17. So he's in year 5 now. He's in year 5. So, and I'm willing, and I'm willing to bet, dollars to donuts. If we rewind the clock to 2014, which was year 5 for Steph Curry, going into the 14th at the end of year 5. If we rewind the clock and I bring all of you guys back there and I show you Steph Curry and I say to you, this dude gonna be arguably the best player in the game within the next 3 to 4 years, he's gonna be in the conversation, top 2, top 3 players in the game. You would be like, this dude don't know what he's talking about. He's got no idea what he's talking about. So when I say that I see who Jason Tatum is and the environment that he's in right now is not helping him, because I saw the dude last year. I saw the dude 2 years ago, and I saw the promise. And the situation needs to get better in Boston. But I'm pretty confident that that's what I think he's going to be. I think it's going to be a conversation. I do think that. And the reason why I think that is because when I think about Luka, I don't think that there's much more improvement from him. I don't think that I'm going to get much more out of Luka than I've already gotten. Luka already came into the game super polished. It was just a matter of Luka taking better care of his body, maturing mentally. I don't see him complain nearly as much to the officials as he did 2 years ago. So, but I don't really see, in terms of his game, I don't really see much from. I don't see a 35-12 guy. I don't see a 36 or a 30-10 guy for 8-9 years. I don't see that. What I do see though is I see a guy who can be 26, 27-8, 27-9. I can see that for the next 8-9 years. Yeah, I can definitely see that. That's somebody you could build your unit. If you got somebody on your unit that's 27-9, you could build your unit around that dude. So I don't play video games. I'm sorry. He reminds Spo. You know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of a lesser. He reminds me of a lesser, more controlled version of Tracy McGrady. That's what he looks like to me. He ain't the athlete that Tracy McGrady was, but he looked like he more in control of his body and his ability to score and to get to the rim, because he will throw it on you. He ain't the athlete that Tracy is, and I think that he's in better health than Tracy was. But that's who I get glimpses of when I see him. Yeah, Giannis. Giannis is the guy that I think, because barring any health issues, and Giannis continues to do what he's doing, we got to start having that conversation. So I think Giannis is going to win the league MVP this year. So let's say, for the sake of argument, good to see you, Michael. Take care, brother. I think Giannis is going to win the league MVP this year. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that he does. That's 3 league MVPs in 4 years. And over the next, I got him playing at this level for 7 more seasons, tops. That's as far as I'm going with him. So in the next 7 years, if he could give me another league MVP, if he could give me another NBA championship, continue to make the All-NBA team, continue to make the All-League defensive team, and have his team in contention every year, we got to start having that conversation. We have to. I'm not saying that we should or it's a good idea. No, we have to start having that conversation. We have to. Which is why it's interesting you say that, Marquis, because did I not say, straighten me out if I'm wrong. Did I not say he's like a more controlled version of Tracy McGrady? He's not the athlete that he is, but he looks like he's just a more controlled version of him. Did I not say that? I want to make sure that I wasn't out of line. Take it like DeMarcus. All right, brother. Before Brandon Roy went down, how good was he, OG? He was on his way to being one of the better. He was already one of the better 2 guards in the game, and he was on his way to being. He had great potential. Think Devin Booker. Think what Devin Booker is doing. That's what Brandon Roy was on his way to doing before he broke down. I got, and it's interesting you mentioned that, Rand, because I got a lot of heat because I don't like Brunson. I love Brunson. I don't know if we could win it with him as our lead guard, but he is absolutely somebody that, like, he kind of reminds me of a more athletic version of Kyle Lowry. That's what he looks like to me, like a more athletic version of him. Like, he could be that. So I love his game. I absolutely love his game. So they were. How much do you think the 76ers got? Hey, I'll tell you what, Labs. What I don't want to do is I don't want to waste. It gets me a little, not misty-eyed, but I mean, I see what Embiid is doing. And, he got hurt last year. And we're talking about before he gets hurt, he was the league MVP. This year, Philadelphia is a game out of first place. And Embiid is playing like an MVP. I mean, how many more seasons you think he got at this level before he actually starts to break down? Embiid is 27. I'll give him 5 more years before he starts slowing down. I'll give him 5. That's as far as I'm going before he starts slowing down. So because of that, that window in Philadelphia isn't open long, B. It's not. It is not open long. I can't say that I was blown away by the fact that Brunson was playing that good. He was nice at Villanova. He was super nice at Villanova. Mm-hmm. Darrell, ain't no low key about it. It ain't news. Why you think Mark Cuban made it clear that anybody that's calling up Dallas, don't ask for him because he is not available. He is not available. Don't ask for him. Mark Cuban has made that perfectly clear. if you calling up inquiring about guys in the trade, do not ask for Brunson because he is not available. He was super nice at Villanova. Mm-hmm. I think the problem that most people don't understand, Rayan, is it's very difficult to cover a left-hander. A guy that's left-handed, he completely throws off how you guard because you're so used to guarding right-handers, right? So now I got to cover a left-hander, which means that I got to do everything the opposite. I got to force you this way, which I'm used to forcing you this way. I got to play with this hand instead of playing with this hand. I gotta deal with you with my weaker leg than with my strength. It's very difficult going up against a left-hander. Very difficult. What do you mean by that? The NBA hasn't been the same since 2016. I don't know what you mean by that. You can make that argument that Fox is one of the best, is one of the most athletic point guards in the game. You can definitely make that argument. Mm-hmm. I don't bother too much with the dunk. I haven't watched the dunk contest for years. I think the last one I watched was with Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon. What was that, 2016? Them two went at it? Something like that? I think so. I haven't really, because that's not true. I'll take that back. That's not true because I did watch it when Derrick Jones was in it because Derrick Jones played for the Miami Heat at the time, and I was a big Derrick Jones fan, so I wanted to see him. He's a highlight reel, no doubt about that. Pistol Pete was a show. That's all. Pistol Pete didn't care about winning. Pistol Pete was a show. That's all Pistol Pete cared about was the show. He didn't care about winning. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult, Darrell, to have to deal with a left-hander because it turns you around. Everything that you used to doing, you got to do it the opposite way now because he's left-handed. So closing out on a left-handed shooter, you got to close out on a different side. Veering the left-handed shooter, you got to make him go right, which means that you used to playing straight up. No, I'm trying to guard. I'm trying to make him go to the weak hand. So guarding the left-hander is very difficult. Andrew Toney, you mean the Boston Strangler? Yeah. Tore up his Achilles in '85, and that was part of the demise of the Philadelphia 76ers. Andrew Toney was super nice. Had a money mid-range game, lock-ass defender, tough as nails. Think Drew Holiday. When you think about when you talk about Andrew, so think Drew Holiday. Think along those lines. That's Andrew Toney. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Well, the Raptors, they are, in my estimation, the Raptors they've already succeeded my expectations. I had them at 11 before the season started. I had them right outside the play-in tournament, and the fact that what are they 7 right now? So I'm not surprised. I am surprised that they're a playoff team. I'm surprised at where they are because I had them in the play-in tournament. But I'm not going to go off the deep end with them. No, I'm not going to do that. And the reason why I'm not going to do that is the same reason why I didn't do that with Washington. Because in the end, are the Raptors winning the NBA championship? By show of hands, anybody in here, are the Toronto Raptors winning the NBA championship? By show of hands, are the Toronto Raptors winning the NBA championship? I don't think so neither. But with that being said, Are the Toronto Raptors making the playoffs? Are the Toronto Raptors making the playoffs? I think that they are. I think that I think they're going to make the playoffs. Absolutely. I do believe that. Now, it sounds to me more like this is just showing the Raptors some love, which absolutely, because like I said, they've already succeeded my expectations of them. I thought that they were a lottery team. I thought they were a team because I'm not a big Van Fleet guy. I'm just not. I get a lot of heat for it, but I thought that Van Fleet was better served as a backup. I don't think you could win it with him. But I'm also wrong about Lowry. I didn't think you could win it with Lowry. That was, of course, until Leonard showed up. Right? So maybe I'm wrong about Van Fleet if, I don't know, Jason Tatum or Luka shows up. Maybe they can win it with him as that guy. And I can appreciate the Scotty Barnes talk. He ain't better than Evan Mobley. He is not. The Rookie of the Year this year, and I said it before the season started, and I stand on it, goes to Evan Mobley. We talking about the first rook since Tim Duncan to be an all-league defender. And he's 15-8, 16-8. I can appreciate what Barnes is doing in terms of buckets. He don't impact the game like Mobley does. He does not impact the game like Mobley does. And I know you want to keep Scotty Barnes' name out there and show him some love, which you absolutely can. And I feel like I can too show him some love, but he's not better than Mobley. No. And on top of that, I don't think Mobley is a cornerstone. I think Mobley is a franchise piece. I think Mobley is a guy who we can build our unit around. I think that Scotty Barnes is a cornerstone. I don't think he's a franchise player. I don't. I think he's a cornerstone. There's a difference between a franchise player and a cornerstone. A cornerstone guy is somebody who's very important to what we're doing. A franchise player is we building our unit around this dude. Toronto is not building a unit around Scotty Barnes and winning. They building that unit in Cleveland around Evan Mobley. You have to respect Scotty Barnes. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Scotty Barnes is not chopped liver. Barnes looked like he's going to be one of the better players in the game. Once he starts to figure it out, he looked like he's going to be one of the better players in the game. I just don't want to overrate him. I just don't want to overreact to who he is. I don't want to do that. I do not want to do that. So, yep, it's about that time for me. So, what's today? Wednesday? Yes, sir. I don't know if I'm going to be on tomorrow night. I don't. I might have something to do, but if I'm not on tomorrow night, I will be on this weekend. Yes, I will. I'll absolutely be on this weekend, and we can pick this up. That's not to say that I won't be on tomorrow night, but if I'm not on tomorrow night, I'll be on this weekend, and we'll pick this back up, and we'll get right back to it. But this is awesome, man. This is absolutely awesome. It's good to see you guys, and we'll get back to it. But until then, take it light, but take it.